let's go ahead and start with the questions. I actually have a question for Dan. And Dan, in regards to the server-side JavaScript debugger, will that also work in the local web preview client so people don't have to set up a server?
Yes, it will.
Very good.
Yep. But they'll need to set those ini settings in their local nodes client.ini.
Right. Okay.
So nodes client ini. Yep.
Okay, and I have a question from Simon, and I think this is for Dan. In terms of the welcome page, and I may have gotten that wrong, can you add your own resource links, like a Stack Exchange link?
You can't currently. It's actually been asked from a couple of people, so we might look into it before. Probably not by beta, but maybe post-beta we might look into it. But at the moment you can't, unfortunately.
All right, thanks, Dan. I have a question from Manuel. In Domino Designer or XPages, is it possible to develop social components?
So I guess that might be a question for Martin, but do you want to take it, Martin? Not sure what he means by social components.
Maybe that's a kind of an extension of, will the Social Business Toolkit be included in Social Edition version 9?
Oh, okay. Yeah, so that too, and then also there's a project up on OpenNTF called the Social Enabler that allows you to connect to all these different social networks and connections in Lotus Live. So that would be something to look into.
So will the social tools that we see in the extension library be included in 9.0?
No, they won't. Not 9.0, unfortunately.
Okay, so we still would have to go out to the extension library for those social controls that are currently out there.
Correct, yes.
Okay, thanks, Mark. We have a question from Bob. Will there be an Android and iOS version of the Notes browser plugin?
Sorry, coming off mute. No, the Notes browser plugin is based on the Notes client code, which is not really portable or even optimized for Android or iOS. If you'd start to think about 64 gig size NSFs, I don't know how you would ever replicate them to a mobile device like that. What we've been recommending is a couple of different things. One is you can always use remote control desktop software that run on most of the tablets as an approach. Or there are solutions like Team Studios Unplugged that allow you to sort of mobilize the apps and sort of even provide some offline capability on those devices.
Okay, thanks, Ed. We're getting a little feedback from somebody.
Yes, somebody's rolling a keg around.
Following on to that question, though, Ed, we got one follow-on. Is there any plans to also make the browser plugin work with the Domino 853 server?
I don't think so. I mean, I think we're testing it specifically with the Social Edition environment. We can certainly, look to whether that's something we could do in the future, but typically we don't hear that upgrading servers is as much of a challenge. So I think it's something that'll specifically be tied to the Domino 9 Social Edition ban.
Okay, I've got a couple of questions from Leaf, and I think we're getting some feedback from someone where your speakers are coming through your mic. But a couple of questions from Leaf. One is, will there be the relational database support in Social Edition 9? And I guess that's a reference to the relational database support that's available in the extension library.
Yeah, understood. So I'm not sure if Martin is gone on mute or something, but I'll leave him chime in later. But no, it won't be in 9, but it is definitely high up on the priority list. It should hopefully be shortly thereafter, but it won't be in the 9.0 release anyway.
Okay, continuing with Leaf's questions. Dojo version, I think you mentioned we're going to see 1.8 with release 9?
Yes, that's correct.
And for the CK editor, can that handle pictures and attachments as well?
That I'm not sure, and I'll have to refer to Martin.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Great. Sorry, I was disconnected and had trouble reconnecting, but for relational database, as you pointed out, then it's not in Social Edition. It is in plan for, well, it is part of a plan that we are wanting to include beyond that. So obviously we can't commit to anything at this point, but it is actually kind of high on our list of priorities beyond that. Images, and what was the question for?
The CK editor, can that handle pictures and attachments?
Yes, and in fact, in the Social Edition release, it'll handle them a lot better than any issues that may have arisen to date. But there's been a lot of work going on in that area, and it is quite a complicated area because of, particularly because of CD and MIME conversions and so forth. And I guess there's just a lot of use cases out there, and we did a lot of work in this release to make sure that, we did a good job around handling additions, deletions, multiple copies, and so forth of attachments and images. So all good news there.
Okay, and I guess one more from Leaf, and that's, is everything included from the extension libx library?
No. libx,
No.
kind of, as the name implies, is
Excluded.
Excluded, experimental, extra, all of the above. So we do have a good. There was a call actually last week with design partners, which I think showed it was a really good demo and a really good presentation as to how to finally get your OpenNTF and your core plugins, which, as you know, for the open source modules, need to coexist. And up to now, they haven't. Maybe it's been tricky to get them, if not impossible to get them to coexist. But the demo was all about showing how the new scheme for managing features could allow you to install an upgrade pack, could allow you to install a later version from OpenNTF and pick up all those features, and how you could, if you like, revert cleanly and safely and quickly from the upgrade pack back to your from your OpenNTF release back to your upgrade pack, and basically to go back and forth and to pick and choose in a much more safe, quick, and elegant way than we've been able to do up to now. So no libx, but libx stuff will eventually migrate, or can eventually migrate, like the relational database stuff, into the main core, and we do have a better story going forward for intermingling the OpenNTF and the core open source modules.
Okay, Howard, do you have any questions?
Yes, we have a question from David Leedy, and David wants to know, are there any plans to upgrade the base version of Eclipse used for Domino Designer? It's getting harder to find compatible plugins like the source control.
So it won't happen in the Social Edition, that much is definite. But definitely we are looking into ways of doing that, but not in the near term, unfortunately. As you could probably imagine, it's a huge undertaking. So, but it is definitely on the radar. We're definitely looking into different ways of doing that.
Okay, Dan, I have a question from Deepak, and this is related to the debugging. Is it enough to upgrade my designer client, or do I need to upgrade the server as well?
No, you'll need to upgrade the server as well. So there's changes in the JavaScript engine that require, so in order for us to be able to debug, we have to pick up those changes in the JavaScript engine, and the engine is actually installed on the server. So if you want to debug an application that's running on a server, then you'll also need the latest, Social Edition server. But if you're able to just debug locally, like if the application is on your local machine, then you just need to have Social Edition installed locally. You don't need the server, obviously, in that case.
Okay, thanks. We had a couple of questions on the CK editor that's going to be included in 9.0. First of all, OV asked if this version will allow you to context edit each paragraph. And then there was another question about iOS 6 support for the CK editor that will be included in 9.0. Anyone care to take that?
Wondering, is Martin on mute?
This is one that I'm, for CK Editor 365, we currently have iOS. Let me just check. You may want to take the next question while we're...
Okay, well, we'll get back to that.
Yeah.
We have two questions for Ed. First of all, where does Quicker fit into the new social edition? And then there was also a question about the 8.5 code stream. Will there be an 8.5.4?
On Quicker, I'm afraid I have to defer. It's not my product, and I don't have an answer as to what integration that team is planning for the social edition release. So I apologize that I don't have that answer, but we can follow up. On 8.5.4, yes, there will be a 8.5.4 maintenance release planned around the third quarter-ish of 2013. It will not have the new features. It will solely be a sort of traditional maintenance release kind of approach.
Okay, thanks, Ed.
Yes, I've got a question from James, and I just posted it up there. Since much of the extension library is in UP1 and is going to be rolled into the social edition, what are we going to see? We're going to see a new extension library beyond the social edition. What's the progression of the extension library model, I guess?
So I'll take that one. I guess the OpenNTF and the innovation on OpenNTF continues in the libx modules. You can see there's work ongoing there with SPT, with relational, and with other more embryonic stuff. I think it's really sort of the model that we've been advocating up to now, according as people have taken the libx stuff and adopted it and used it, and it just simply escalates it in terms of its importance. It then becomes a question of whether that is easily integrated into the next release, but certainly adoption and use is a firm indicator of its importance to us, so it becomes part of our planning process, and it makes a good case for putting it forward and including in the next release.
Okay, Howard, do you have any questions?
Yeah, we have one from Cran. Are there any planned integration points for same time that's new in the social edition? Any new controls or anything like that?
So you mean from a next page's point of view?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, so no, there are no new supported controls in the social edition for same time, but again, the social enabler up on OpenNTF that has same time capabilities. So basically you can have the text within your views and columns be same time aware. So if there's a bunch of names in a view column, for instance, you can make those names same time aware. But that's, I believe that Martin might know further, but I think that's the extent of the same time support.
Okay, thanks. And a question
yeah, you're
for
right, Dan.
Dan.
That's
oh.
Sorry, there's just a delay on my side. Regarding iOS, the support statement around that from CK Editor is that it does work from iOS 5 onwards. So it should work on iOS 6, but I guess there's not a firm statement there around support for iOS 6 as yet.
Okay, thanks, Martin. I know that in some of the earlier code drops there were some issues with the iOS support with the CK editor, but I'm not sure if that was the 3.6.5 or an earlier version.
Yeah, so with the beta releases coming out, you'll find that a lot of the mainstream issues have been resolved, and as I said in my presentation earlier, the experience that you get in X Pages, because we have extended Seek Editor in various ways, is on par, is equivalent to the experience that you would have with Seek Editor standalone, and they have made improvements there for iOS support, so you'll have the best available experience on iOS yet. But there are remaining issues that that Seek Editor themselves would need to sort out. Nothing major at this point.
Okay, I have a question from Paul, and I've posted that. How will the embedded experiences work with local replicas? Will it link to the local replica, or will it only work online?
For embedded experiences in the Notes client?
I'm assuming yes. Yeah, that would make sense.
Yeah, well, like we have run examples of the type of thing we were just showing here locally in the Notes client without any issues. Just imagining if there's some particular server-side logic that's particular to the application that then is replicated locally. Maybe you have perhaps some issues there depending on the logic contained within the application, but in a generic sense, then you shouldn't have an issue with the local replica.
Yeah, and I think maybe one comment there as well, Martin, is if, say, for instance, you were working offline with your mail database and the mail that you were looking at, the email that you were looking at, referred to some embedded experience that's actually only available online, then in that case, then I believe the email just reverts back to the old way of doing things, and it would just show a link to that particular online experience. It wouldn't, try to render the embedded experience in the email in that case, I think.
Okay, thanks. And we're going to take two more questions. I have a question from Ovi, and I think it's in terms of debugging. Can you debug Java beans that are accessed through server-side JavaScript? What would be the integration there, where you're have a Java bean and you're accessing that?
Yeah, you can actually do that today with 853. So if you have Java code that's available to Domino Designer, so for instance, if it's Java code that's within your database, then you can just set up a Java debug configuration, a remote Java debug configuration, and one of the slides actually went into that in the presentation there. So if you get the presentation afterwards, you can actually do that with 853 as it stands today, and I think also with 852 and probably 851 you can do that. So that's already, but in Social Edition obviously you'd be able to do that also.
Okay, thanks, Paul. Do you have a final question?
I'm looking. Do you have one?
Yeah, here's another one. Regarding the Xpink and the new feature, you had seen showing the XSP execute command embedded IE launcher. What about non-Windows systems? I guess, is there a way to launch whatever browsers embedded in something that's not a Windows-based Notes client?
I guess any custom Java code that, as long as it's containable within the plugin, and the plugin implements the extension points you require, then you can execute arbitrary Java. You can execute arbitrary stuff. So we're just picking to some extent picking examples at random in terms of what we're showing in that particular in that particular demo, utilizing stuff that might be evident to people in the Notes UI workspace and in the Eclipse framework. So all of that stuff is just ships with Notes Core, so that would work on any platform. And then I think above and beyond that, you'd have to simply make sure that whatever arbitrary stuff that you're doing in your custom Java classes could be supportable on the platform in question. And once that's the case, then you shouldn't have any barriers.
Do we have
Okay,
time for one more?
go ahead, Paul.
Question from Declan. Any plans for a better file upload control that'll support multi-file uploads and server-side interaction after the upload?
I can't say that there's any particular plan for that specific control. I would simply say if there's, if there's a particular request for it, then we can see if we could fit it in as part of an enhancement request for the runtime going forward.
Okay, thanks. And I'd like to thank everyone for attending. In a few days, we will send out an email with a link to the recorded presentations as well as the slides, a PDF of all the slides that were shown today. And I'd also like to give a special thanks to Ed, Dan, and Martin for taking their time today to do this presentation.
Let me add my thanks, and thanks all for attending, and thanks to all of our presenters for a great presentation.
Thank you.